Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us for this panel discussion on pursuing your graduate studies in the United States. We are so glad you can join us. My name is Dr. Peter Maribey. I'm a career and life coach, and I also work as an administrator at a university called Miami University, which is in the Midwest of the United States. And I will welcome my colleague and friend, Dr. Mary Mashere, to introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Mashere. I'm a professor at Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville. What else am I supposed to say?
Anything that will help folks to understand what you do and how you can help in this presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I know Dr. Mario Bay didn't say much about his background, but we were undergraduate students together at the University of Nairobi at what seems like decades ago. After that, I worked in Nairobi and the surrounding areas for a few years as an IT professional, working at various levels in IT, including server support, administration, customer help desk, the works. And then I decided that I was interested in pursuing further studies. I had done my master's, long distance master's, while still in Kenya. And then about 8 years ago, I moved to the US, where I worked on my PhD. I got my PhD from the University of Arkansas. It was a 5-year program. When I was done, I was offered a position here at SIUE, where I teach undergraduate and master's students, because that's who we have at our university. I'm also a researcher. I work in the area of social inclusion and diversity, identity research, telemedicine, and IT for development. Thank you.
Okay, and I did my undergraduate as a degree, as Dr. Masharia says, at the University of Nairobi. It was in computer science. Then I did a master's degree in leadership studies at what is now International Leadership University. And then I did my PhD in University of San Diego in leadership studies, an interdisciplinary program. And my interests in leadership development programs that help people develop the efficacy and the competencies to lead as socially responsible leaders. And I currently work as an administrator. My field is international education. So I've received, like international students and scholars from abroad, as well as send students from our universities that I have worked to study abroad, for a semester, for a short-term program. And so that's where I'm currently. But I also work as a career and life coach, and I really enjoy that. And that's why I put up this seminar. So before we enter to what we want to talk about today, I just want to let you know a few of the ground rules that we're going to use. I'm sure by now you realize that you've been muted and your camera is off, and you will only be able to do that when I invite you or when Dr. Mashere invites you. And I'm sure you can understand why. We just want to be safe on the internet. But we are also live streaming on Facebook. And so if you're on Facebook and you would like to interact with us, then please just type a comment. If you have a question, you can also type it in the chat box and we'll be able to see it and respond to it. And so those are the ground rules. I must also make a disclaimer at the beginning to say that we are offering this panel as it's an educational endeavor, and we are not claiming to represent the universities that we work for. So we are not admissions counselors, and so whatever you hear, it's for educational purposes. when you actually want to apply to a specific university, including the ones that we are working for, you will need to follow the admissions requirements of the university. So, and even if we say anything about scholarships, you will have to follow the specific university's requirements about scholarships. So that said, we will cover a number of things such as, finding a university, how do you meet admissions requirements, what about things like standardized tests, you may have heard of them, and then things like getting your transcript evaluated, and questions about scholarships and grants. Those seem to be like many of the questions that we have received from folks, and so we'll be addressing that. Now, I see we have a couple of participants who have joined us, and I just want to sort of like sample from the audience just to find out from you who we have on the audience. Okay, so I will launch a poll here just to find out what is your educational level, and so if you see the poll there, if you're on Zoom, just click there and let us see who we have. Yeah, I'll just give a moment for folks to respond. Okay. Thank you so much for those who have. Okay, we just give a moment. Great, I'll just end it there. So it looks like we have most of the participants at least have an undergraduate degree, and we have a couple of master's degrees, and we have maybe one with a PhD, a doctoral degree. Thank you so much for participating in that poll. Maybe then we will start with the first question, Dr. Macharia, which is, how do you find, a university to study, whether it is a master's or a PhD? But before we do that, I wanted to say what our assumptions are, because this panel is, targeted at a certain audience. It's not like for, everyone. So we're assuming that you at least have an undergraduate degree from what is a regionally accredited university outside of the United States. And I'll explain what that is. That you're interested in a graduate studies in the United States, whether it is a master's or whether it is a PhD of any kind, and that you are interested in the process of how to gain admissions and how to possibly get funding for your degree. So that's the assumption that we are making. If you are here just, to listen and just to get information either for yourself or for somebody you're welcome to participate and listen, but this will make more sense to that group. So let's start, Dr. Macharia, by talking about how you find a university. How did you find the university that you eventually, apply to, and or universities if there were more than one?
Thank you, Dr. Maribe. So I think the first step is figuring out what it is that you want to study. So if you are interested in IT, you have to kind of think about how to narrow it down. IT is a really wide field. So do you want to do programming? Do you want to do networking? What exactly is it that you're interested in? So you have to be very clear about that. And then the next thing you have is you have the tool of the internet, right? So what I have, for example, over here is, if I can share my screen, is I've pulled up the New York University, and most universities will have a link towards their academic programs. So if you look through it and be able to see what, I'm sorry, was that an interruption?
No, just go ahead.
Okay, so if you look through their list of programs that they have available, you can kind of scroll down and see what they, what they have to offer. And most of them will have more information if you click on the link, for example, and that will tell you exactly what it is about. And, even it might even tell you if they have a master's in it, a PhD in it. It will tell you about their faculty. You'll be able to click on each of the links of the faculty to be able to see what kind of research they do. So you can see if that is an area that is of interest to you. So I've had people who've asked me in the past questions about, can they come to my university, or how would they apply to a university? If you're not clear about what it is you want to do, then that makes it very difficult for you to decide where to go. So I think that's the first and most important thing, to figure out what it is you want to do, what exactly which career path you're interested in. And that kind of gives you the direction, it points in the direction in which you can start looking. I'm not sure you have answered the question you asked.
Yeah, sure. And I think also it is important to know that there are different resources that you can use to locate a university. And for instance, I wanted to do leadership studies, a graduate degree. And so there are so many. When you just Google, you will find so many universities saying they're offering leadership studies graduate programs. And I was like, oh, how do I know which is a really quality program if there are hundreds of them? So there is an organization called the National Clearinghouse for Leadership Programs. And so I said, oh, okay, so that's like the one recognized body that says these are quality leadership, studies, graduate programs that we recognize, because they've analyzed the quality of the program. And from there, then I was able to see, okay, let me start with these universities. I had one question from one person who was intending to participate, asking, I would like to do a graduate degree, I think a PhD in supplies management. And so I was saying, like, how do I know which is a good university? And I said, okay, well, first you have to understand that, supplies management is taught at a business school. And not all business schools are created equal. Here in the US, there is a body called AACSB, which is, I think, the something like the Association of Business Schools. So a university that is teaching business programs that is not part of that AACSB is a degree that might not be very widely recognized. Yeah, so you have to look at your professional body. Is it counseling? Is it something to do with computer science? Are the faculty part of the IEEE? Is it the Institute of Engineering and something like that? You have to know your field, and you have to search for that, and then find institutions that are and faculty that are affiliated to those professional bodies, and then you'll be able to know that's a good program. I think it's also important to say that to talk about accreditation. Yeah, so a university, you have to make sure that your university is what is called a regionally accredited university. So all universities in the United States, high institutions of learning, in order to offer accredited degrees, must have that accreditation, and they will usually say it on their website. And you have to check, are they accredited? And make sure that you're applying to a university that is a quality university.
Yes.
You wanted to say something?
Yes, I wanted to add about the business school. So when I was interested in doing my studies in IT, I discovered that in the US, they classify IT under the business school, which was a surprise to me because I thought IT would be under the School of Computer Science or under the School of Engineering, where computer science is based. So you have to do your research. I remember applying for, when I put in my application to the university, I actually sent it to the School of Computer Science, only to discover that I had sent it to the wrong place because IT is under the School of Business. So some little nuances about the US compared to other countries in the way they structure their programs.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that. If you have any questions regarding, how to identify a university and accreditation and all that, please, you can type in the box. If you joined late and you're asking what happened, you'll be able to see a recording of the video later. So you're still in good shape. Let's talk about, like the timeline of how do you start and when do you start. So right now I'm going to launch another poll, and then we'll be able to see where people are interested. So if you could respond to this poll and let us know, you just interested in a master's degree, a PhD, a doctor's of business administration, a doctor of education, a doctor of psychology, a doctor in theology. Yeah, okay. Thank you for all those who are participating. I'm just going to close it in a minute or so. All right, thank you so much. So as you can see here, we have most participants who are interested in a master's at 75%, and we have a few that are interested in a PhD. Oh, okay, thank you so much. So Dr. Macharia, tell us, people who are interested in master or PhD degree, what is the timeline?
So usually universities start taking applications at the beginning of the year. So the academic year in the US starts in at the end of August, like the third week of August or the last week of August. So if you're putting in your application, you need to know that there are many steps along the way. So you need, first of all, after you've identified the program that you want to take part in, or the program that you want to study in, you have to, after you've put in your application with the school, they need to send you documents, and there's the back and forth. You also need to remember that you need a visa interview at the US Embassy, and that also takes time because you have to put in an appointment, and I think there's a waiting period of could be up to 2 or 3 months. And so all this back and forth takes time. So you need to give yourself at least a minimum of 6 months before August, right? So if you can start as early as January or as early as February, that's usually the best time, so that you have enough time to put documents in place, find, you have to get transcripts because they want to see your transcripts. They need to convert that, because we in Kenya, we don't use a GPA system, which they use in the US. They need to convert that. So all this takes time. Remember that you want to get here around July if you're planning to actually be here physically to take classes in person. So you need to have done all this beforehand. So give yourself minimum of 6 months, more if you can. If you can do it a year earlier, that's the better. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Macharia. I agree. I would actually want to add, maybe you need to start actually a year out. So the way admissions works here in the US is the system is that they follow, the seasons like fall, spring, winter and summer. So most admissions are usually done for the fall semester, which begins in most universities around August, September, or some may do also spring admissions, which is around the end of January, the beginning of February. So for instance, right now, most universities are now working on admissions for the fall of next year, which is around August, September of 2022. So if you're thinking of spring, which is January, February, that's too late I think they've already sent out, admissions decisions for that. And so for many of them, the applications are now open. Now they're receiving applications. So it actually takes a year out. And it's even more important if you're a person who would like funding, who would like to receive a scholarship, who would like to receive some kind of grant or some kind of what is called financial aid to help you pay for your studies. Because people who have, if you have the money and you are going to pay for your own tuition and living expenses, they'll even admit you very close to the start date, because of course the universities, these programs are actually designed to make money for the university. They're not just programs that they just admit people, and for free of charge. No, it's a venture. They have to pay faculty, they have to pay expenses and staff. So that's what happens. Yeah, so let's talk about at this point, the application process. Now that we know the timeline, yeah, what are applications requirements? Yeah, Dr. Macharia. So list like some kind of applications requirements that many graduate programs will ask for.
So I had mentioned transcripts. So one of the things that you need to make sure, of course, is be able to go to NEC, Kenya National Examination Council. Make sure you get your transcript from them. US universities will also require you for graduate programs to either do a GRE or a GMAT. GMAT is for business schools. If you're going to education or science, then you need a GRE. So the good thing right now is that because of COVID, some of these admission requirements have been waived. So if any of you have been interested in studying in the US, this might be the best time to try applying because they're waiving a lot of those admission requirements. So you need to show some proof of funding. If you're able to land a graduate assistantship, that is of help to you. Otherwise, you have to show them how you'll be able to fund your studies. Those are the main requirements that I can think of. Make sure you have your transcripts, your GRE or your GMAT, some proof of funding. I think that's mostly it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome. We have our other panelist, Dr. Kitheka, join us. And so I think we'll just carry on as we are, and then you will have a chance to introduce yourself, Dr. Kitheka. But let me share an example of a university here and its admissions requirements, just as an example, because many folks have said that they're interested in master's degrees. So you look here, I said admissions, and they have their doctorate degrees and their master's degrees. So if you come to, many people have said they're masters. So if you come to master's degrees and say, okay, I'm interested in, masters in higher education leadership or marriage and family therapy, here they list their application process. So they say here, begin your application. Most applications happen online, yeah? So people don't require you now to mail your applications anymore. Yeah, you open an application, you would have to have letters of recommendation, yeah, from people that know you, a current resume, what is called a statement of purpose. And for many universities, you will have an application fee, which is around 45, 50, depending on the university. You'll also need to produce your official transcripts from your university. But there's a caveat here for students that are from outside of the United States. Some universities require standardized test scores. Yeah, and maybe we can enter a little bit into that. And then they'll also require English proficiency exam. And this is a tricky one, because for people from countries that are taught in English may argue like, hey, why do I need to do that? And you may make a case to the university and say that I did my undergraduate in English, and so can you waive that? And then there's an application review process, which means that once you've submitted, there's a committee of faculty members that review them, and then they make admissions decisions. So I think it's important for us to maybe address some of these things, because even before we talk about funding, you have to gain admission. Yeah, there's no way we are going to talk about funding if you are not yet admitted, and that's a big thing. So let's talk about transcripts. Yeah, you can see here, if you're applying for a master's degree, then you need to have your transcripts from your undergraduate institution. But if you are outside of the United States, as you can see this university here, you would have to have your transcripts evaluated. Yeah, because it's a different system from the US. They would want to know does this student actually eligible to join this program? Yeah, for one, the United States uses a different grading system, which is the GPA, and they use a different system. So they would usually require that an evaluation service, such as the ones listed here, are going to evaluate your transcript, which means that your school has to send your transcript to this evaluation service, which is a paid service. You will have to pay about $200. You can convert that to your currency, to this evaluation service, to go through your transcript and to convert it into the equivalents in the US. And then they send those results to the school, and then the school determines whether you're eligible. So maybe some of you can talk about like the GPA requirement for admissions. Like, what is the GPA requirement, Dr. Kitheka?
Wait.
All right. Yeah, go, Mary.
So before he talks, so a couple of things. So about the admissions. So again, because of COVID, a lot of universities have waived the admission fee.
Yeah.
You may have to converse with them. You may have to get into a discussion with them, but some of them are willing to waive that. Then also about the transcripts, sending them to that center to get them evaluated. So some universities actually do it themselves. When I think back to joining University of Arkansas, they actually did the conversion themselves, and I didn't have to go through that. So you just need to get with them and show them your interest. And then they can, some of these things are not set in stone. They can be flexible. Thank you. Go ahead. Kip.
All right. Yeah, the transcript process sometimes is very frustrating, because here, you're given transcripts and you can take them around with you and you can submit those ones, but mostly they want you to your university to send transcripts. There are cases where if you have your own copies, you can just give them your copies as they wait for the official transcripts. So that's a process. And then the GPA, I don't know what is the equivalent of upper class kind of score in Kenya. What's the equivalent of that? When we are here, we are talking about GPA. Like in my university, to go to grad school, you need a GPA of 2.5 out of 4, which could be a lower division, second class.
Yes.
Yeah, and in some of them, like Dr. Mashari has said, because of all the COVID issues now, they are passing through those kind of strict requirements, GMAT, GRE. So you can get away. I want to tell you, I joined graduate school, and this story I'm telling it so that you don't feel like, first class honors or second class honors. My undergraduate, I got a second class lower division. Okay, and now I am a professor. So in a way in my life, I don't let anybody tell me no, 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 because I played a lot when I was in lower division. So you can still get in, you just have to do a very good kind of proposal, how you're going to weave around research, what's your drive about research, what do you want to achieve in life. It's not all about money. We know America is about money, but if you talk about money too much, they might think, oh, okay, maybe that's not appealing. But grad school is about research. Grad school is about connectivity. Grad school is about giving back to community. If you write a very strong, appealing letter, and you have just kind of a case for yourself, the letter, because the transcript, sometimes they say something, they just give a glimpse of you. But what is your statement going forward? What's your scholarship statement? What are you thinking about your contribution to the university? I think I arrived late because I was in another program. We have after school programs and all that. And we, you know, you know, we'll talk about that when that time comes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I think you've really introduced a very important, segue, which is, you mentioned your statement of purpose. So we've talked about transcripts, yeah, and saying that some universities now are waiving the requirement to have it evaluated, and there is a standardized test course, and you're saying usually some schools would require the GRE, the graduate record exam,
right.
And some are waiving. But I remember that I had to do the graduate record exam, which cost me about $200 plus some time to prepare. And then, the organization would send the results to the university. But as you're saying, some of them are now waiving that because of COVID, and also some of them because of just diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. And
yeah,
then
and in Kenyan currency, $200 at about 22,000 Kenyan shillings.
Yeah, yes, that was quite some amount of money. And then there is the English, which I said can be waived. And then there is here is the part that I hope that we can really focus on, because this is very important. You can have good grades, but if you don't have good recommendation letters and a statement of purpose that is really compelling, it's unlikely that you will be chosen. So maybe we can focus a few minutes here, because I feel like it's so important. I have been involved in programs where people have to request someone to submit a letter of recommendation, and if you read the recommendation, it was so poor, like and if you read the statement of purpose, it's like, wow, and those are the things that committees look at. So could you talk a little bit about let's talk about statement of purpose. What is it, what is it meant to address, and how do you do a quality one?
All right, I could go first. A statement of purpose, since we are talking about grad school here, we are not talking about a job in a company. So a statement of purpose has to be kind of academic. You have to tailor it. Most of us come, when I came to grad school, I had worked for about 10 years. And so I have that experience that is going to work for you because they see you have some connection with community, but you want to tailor your statement of purpose in an academic way, in a scholarship way. The same thing like letters of recommendation. You worked in this big company and there's a boss who you like a lot, the CEO. Many times they don't care about the CEO. You want to look for a professor or a teacher or an instructor that you worked with, and then you tailor yourself in an academic perspective. In the US, about going to grad school and going to master's or PhD program, they just want to see a statement of research. What are your research interests? So the first one is your research interest. The next one is your teaching interest, because at some point, even when you are doing undergrad, master's program, at some point, somebody is going to ask you, can you help me supervise this? Or can you help me grade this? So in a way, you either a teaching assistant or a graduate assistant. At some point, it's going to go that way. So there has to be something to do with your teaching interest, your research interest. And then you have to think about, as a professor now, I have my teaching, I have my research, and then the other part is my contribution to community, my service. So how do you see your work, your research work, your classroom work, your research work, how do you see it contributing to community? Where do you see yourself fitting in the community, or a bigger picture beyond you? Now we are talking about not millennial development. We have the SDGs, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. If you tailor yourself around those goals, you are addressing a real world problem, then you are likely to be listened more than when you talk about other things, how you want to excel as a marketing executive. Sometimes that might work, but they want a bigger picture of community service, global service. Now we're talking about globalization, community service, cultural competence, that kind of life. Okay, back to you. Let me see what you got.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for that. There's a question that came in for Dr. Macharia. Given the low numbers of women in STEM programs, can women of color expect to get fair treatment in admission and in the program if they gain entry? I think that seems to be already if you're inside, but let's even talk about the process of even entering, because that's where we are at. Could you address that? Do you have the same process of having a statement of purpose for a STEM degree? And
yes, so just to add on to what Dr. Kiteka has said, so a statement of purpose basically is telling them who you are, what your background is, what your academic interests are, and what value you're going to bring to the program or to the university. So about that question about women and diversity, right now there's a big push towards diversity. And I would say that maybe this is not politically correct, but women have a greater advantage than men right now in getting into programs, because universities are trying to show how diverse they are, how accepting they are of people who are different. And as we know, traditionally, the universities have been a place that has been dominated by white males. So right now, there's the push to go in the other direction, to bring diversity, to bring minorities, to bring people with disabilities and so on. So I would say, yes, if you are a female and you want to get into STEM, this is a great time to apply.
okay, great. Thank you so much for that. And I just wanted to add something about letters of recommendation, because this is so important. So usually when we're asked get a letter of recommendation, we just go to somebody, maybe a professor or somebody who knows us professionally, and say, write me a letter of recommendation. Mistake. That is wrong. That is incomplete. What is recommended that you do is that you sit down with somebody who you want to be your recommender. If you can, maybe they are distant, but have a phone call, ask them formally, so they know this is a serious thing, and then provide them with the information that you want them to recommend you for. Yeah, so prepare a packet. So for instance, put a copy of your CV, put, some information about the program that you're applying to. Yeah. So if it's a master's in whatever it is, or PhD, print out the information or save it in a PDF, and then also describe to the person what you think they can say about you that will, that speaks to the requirements for that, program. So if it's a professor, let them know that that you took this class and class, show them a transcript, let them know that you did this project and in their class, and so it will jog their memory. Because professors teach so many people. I think Dr. Kitheka and Dr. Macharia will agree that if somebody you taught 3 years ago or 4, it's very hard to remember the person,
right,
and to write a very good recommendation for them. But if they give you like a transcript, and they give you their CV, and they give you the requirements, and they try and jog your memory about what it is that qualifies you, and makes you a good candidate for the program, then you'll be able to write a good recommendation for them. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. You're making a very good point. And I'm going to suggest this. I think it's fair where you say, find somebody you can provide your documents or you can have conversations with. And I have to say, I have written recommendation letters for people I don't know, I have never met in person, or there's somebody I met in person, then she told me I want to go for grad school. And I told her, tell me about your story. So she told me about her story in Nairobi, and I wrote her a recommendation letter. So those who are listening here, and I hope Dr. Maribe and Dr. Macharia, we are willing to do with that because we are here in the system. We know what they're looking for. If you think we can help in some way, connect you to a university or provide some snippet for you, like give you an idea of what's going on, have a conversation with me, send me your papers, I'm gonna review. Maybe we're gonna have a WhatsApp, we're gonna talk about, and then I can write you a letter because it happens like, although America is a very big university, we tend to know each other. You ask me for somebody in Penn State, I'm gonna tell you one person. You ask me for somebody in Miami University, I'm gonna tell you somebody I know there. And these are like people we have, like, find out about this program, or somebody's gonna be applying to this program. Can you check for their papers when they come around? It's a good thing. At least you have a step, you know, somebody who is looking at your CV or your application 2 times, you know, it's like, okay, let's set aside this one because it's written by Bernard, who is in Miami University or Missouri State University, and that's an American university. I think we can help each other that way we can be stepping stones, because it's difficult, you know, writing applications when you're in Kenya, and then people in Kenya writing references and they have never understood the American system. So I'm offering myself, I don't know about my colleagues, if you want a conversation with me and ask me some questions, we can have a WhatsApp follow-up and I see what you are and what you want. We can help that way, just as part of the recommender, not like the final recommender, but we can be a reference. We don't even have to be a recommender. We can be a reference. And when they see a name of somebody in American university, I think that could be a good thing.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dr. Kisaka. You make a good point. And those are very helpful. And thank you for offering yourself as a resource. That's why we're here, you know, like to help, to provide information and to give back, you know, because some people helped us. So I think, you know, people are really eager to talk about scholarship, and this is a good transition point, because now we have talked about admissions. You know, you have done a good statement of purpose, you have gotten good recommendation letters, you have everything all good, you know, all sorted out, you've submitted, you know, it has been reviewed in a timely fashion. You know, it's now being reviewed by the selection committee, because the selection committee is a number of faculty members who are actually going to be the instructors, and they tell the admissions who to admit, if I'm correct. There's something I think we may have skipped here. Yeah, is this really it, or do you recommend that a person contacts faculty members in the department before they submit their application? Is that appropriate? Is it okay, or is it considered canvassing? Tell me about that. What is your process? I can talk about mine, but how did you do it, especially for, you know, graduate programs? I know in undergraduate you just submit.
Yeah. Well, Mary, Dr. Macharia, you want to go first?
Okay, so I know most of you said that you're interested in masters. So my process was slightly different because I was applying for a PhD, and I had a specific area of interest. I wanted to work in IT for development, and specifically in developing countries, and with special consideration of women. And so I was looking for a professor who would supervise my research and would work with me in that area. So I had the help of my sister, Dr. Macharia, who advised me to go that way. because this was a specific, when you're working in, when you want to do a PhD, it's a specific niche area that you want to get into. And so you want a professor who is familiar with that area. So what I would do is I would go to different university websites and look at the profiles of the different professors and see what their area of research was, what their interests were, so that I could see if there's a professor whose research interests matched mine, then they would supervise my dissertation. So with the master's, you don't need to get as specific as that, looking for a specific professor, because the master's are a little bit more generic. They're not as specific as a PhD. And I know that in my particular university where I am right now in SIUE, I do get lots of emails from students who are interested in joining the university. Unfortunately, I'm not a decision maker in that area. And so what I do is I simply forward them to our graduate admissions director, and he reviews them, and I guess he walks them through the process. So I'm not sure how other universities do it, but in the university where I am currently, it's the graduate admissions director who makes that decision.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I totally agree that with the master's program, it's just a shot in the darkness. Like, try as many as you can. Most of the programs, they are not very specific. It doesn't hurt still to invest. Okay, no, it's gonna hurt. You have to investigate that department and know exactly what you apply. Yeah, so you're just not sending to the university. You are sending to a particular program that you're interested in. And like Dr. Macharia said, with a PhD, oh man, it's so different. You have to know the department. You have to know who is the head of the department. And I advised a friend of mine recently this way: look for somebody like what Dr. Macharia did, but it was a little different. Look for somebody who is doing the same work as you are interested in. Send them just a very tiny email. I'm interested in your work. Could you provide me more details? Or in a way, you have to know the department when you're doing a PhD. The master's is a little different. If you want to impress them, just tell them about tell them about what's going on. That's a master's program. PhD is way different because you're going to be stuck there for about 4 to 5 years. You better know. And typically what happens is to get into a PhD program, there must be a professor willing to adopt you. You are like, I'm here, anybody who wants me. And if there's nobody who wants to work with you, or nobody who has an interest in the way you are trying to do, you can keep on sending many applications and you'll never get adopted. So somehow you have to see somebody who is doing what you're doing, or doing what you are interested in, or just you click. And then that person says, yes, I want to work with this Njoki because I want to support her, or I want her to do research for me so we can publish together. That's how PhDs work.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's very important for our participants to know that unless you're going to pay the tuition and the expenses, the way to get funding is by identifying, like a professor or, who has doing research that you may be interested in, and that you will be able to work with that professor because they have funding to pay, like a graduate assistant or a graduate teaching assistant. And that's how the funding comes. It's by the work that you're going to do for the department or for the professor. So even while you're submitting an application, it's very important for you to be in touch, to have attended information sessions. Now many of them are virtual. I remember in my university, they would have information sessions, but at that time it was all on campus, open house. People would fly from all over the US, take a weekend off, meet the professors, meet the faculty, tour the school, and that's how people would make the decision, and that's how they would, build a rapport with the professors who are eventually going to make the admission decisions. So, and decide like who gets an assistantship that pays for their tuition. So that's very important. Just applying is not sufficient. for most. Even for masters, if you're expecting to get an assistantship, a teaching assistantship or a graduate research assistant. So maybe at this point, let's talk about that, you know, because people are interested in funding.
Yeah.
What kinds of funding are there and how do you get that funding? Yeah. If you, that's how you're expecting to pay for your, because there are different costs. There is the tuition, there are fees, you know, like you have to pay fee. There is medical insurance, and then there is living expenses, you know. So, and those can really add up. Like for me, I think at that point I was calculating that it was going to be about $45,000 a year, which in Kenya shillings, which is where I was from, it was going to be a lot of money. So let's talk about that, Dr. Macharia.
I'm going to start off by talking about scholarships. I know that in the minds of a lot of people, they think, how do I get a scholarship? How do I get a scholarship? So there's a difference between a scholarship and an assistantship. So a scholarship is where you get, well, it can be a full scholarship or a partial scholarship. And this is basically where they give you the money or they pay for part of your studies, where, and then most of the time you do something in return. So for example, you could get a sports scholarship. So if you're an athlete, if you're a Kenyan marathoner who wins all the marathons, you could apply for, you know, and they want marathoners and they want people to run for the school. You could get a sports scholarship, and in return, they take care of you, they take care of your expenses, they take care of your food, they take care of everything. But the thing about some of those scholarships, so like if you get that sports scholarship, if you get injured and you can no longer run for the school, and no longer play sports for the school, unfortunately, they drop you and you're left in a bind, because then how do you proceed with your studies? And when I was in Arkansas, there was a specific student who had that happen to him. So he came on a sports scholarship, a Kenyan. He was running for the university. He got an injury, and that was the end of that. And he had to figure out how to proceed with the rest of his studies. If you're trying to get a scholarship based on your academic performance, you're competing against people from all over the world. The academic scholarships are highly, highly competitive, and they're almost, I don't want to say impossible, but they're very, very difficult to get, because again, like I said, you're competing with people from all over the world. So if you're trying to get in using a scholarship, I would say the best thing is to get one specifically from the school if they're available. But again, note that the competition is very high. So I'll hand it over to Dr. Kipek, and you can talk about assistantships.
Okay. So we have, okay, that's a very good, Dr. Macharia, you did a great job. There is also another way of funding your studies. And the other way, master students can get that, but mostly for PhD students. And I think what Peter say, we have to clarify that. Not many people, and I believe, yeah, not many people can afford to go to grad school in the US. Leave alone, you know, we're talking about masters. It's very expensive. Now you're talking about PhD. The price is going to skyrocket hundreds of thousands of dollars. So let's say we cannot afford. Most of us who are here, we cannot afford to pay for that. So how do you get in? So you can get scholarship, you can get grants, and there are scholarship for minorities, scholarship for women, you know, all sorts of things. You have to look for them. If you need some information, just email me and I will send you some links where you can look, or you can ask Google, you can ask Siri, there are lots of them. The other way that, and this is how I got to even to my master's program and my PhD program, you get what is called an assistantship. An assistantship is where you are helping a professor do research. And so it's like you are working for them because they have a grant and they pay you. Or you can be a teaching assistant. You are employed, you are teaching some classes, you are helping a professor cover, or you're helping the department teach some courses because a professor maybe somewhere has a grant. And usually when you get a grant as a professor, you lose a class, or you can drop a class because you're managing a grant. So somebody somewhere has dropped a class and they want somebody to teach that class. So you are hired as a teaching assistant for a certain class or to work with a certain professor And because you are working, this is America, you have to be paid because you're doing some work. So there are those two levels, a graduate assistant or a teaching assistant. And when you, okay, let's call it graduate assistant. You can go towards research assistant or teaching assistant. Okay, and
Yeah.
I did, for my PhD, I was a teaching assistant. And then at some point, there was not enough money. So I was doing both, doing research and doing teaching. Now, in your first year, you're going to do a lot of classwork. Second year, they want you to put your proposal together. Then in the third year, the money is going to start dwindling. So they want you to start writing proposals. You can write proposals and get funded. They're going to tell you it's like you're going to take more responsibilities. They might give you 2 classes because they want to fund you. But once, you know, what we want all of us is get accepted, get in. Most universities are going to take care of you because they know we are from underprivileged countries, poor countries. So once you get yourself inside, you can navigate. And one of the things that we bring to the universities, and I hope Dr. Macharia, Dr. Maribe, you have seen that, Kenyans were just so hardworking in many ways. Not even to many African countries. We are so hardworking, we are so focused, and I've seen Kenyans do a lot of work. Where I was at the university, we had everybody from East African countries at the same time, the same department. And it's kind of, our work ethic is just very different, you know? So there's no way, if you're doing your work, there's no way they're gonna let you like languish in the streets or something like that. So bring your work ethic, you know, do your class work, and then you'll get that funding, you know. But if you don't work, I'm telling you, like what Dr. Macharia was saying, at some point you're gonna get dropped. And the worst thing that you want to do is a program takes 4 years, then you find yourself taking 5 years. You're gonna be in a lot of trouble, you know, because that 5th year or 6th year, you're gonna have to look for funding, and maybe your visa does not allow you to do work. So bring your work ethic, and once you have that, and once you get in, even when one money runs dry in one area, they're gonna find you money in another area. There's money around. Okay, that's my answer.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. Well, let me sort of like recap what it is that we've said, because we've said a lot about scholarships.
I know,
and so it's going to cost, it's expensive to study. And usually how many students here in the US do it is that they get loans from the government, and you know, and like private loans from institutions, you know, to pay for tuition and for fees and expenses. And then, you know, they may also apply for scholarships. So there are merit scholarships, there are all kinds of scholarships, and each scholarship has its eligibility requirements. You know, some may be for, you know, people studying a certain area, some may be identity, you know, identity. So like it may be Black and African American, you know, like Latinos, you know, to encourage diverse, you know, people from diverse backgrounds. And so what people usually do is that they try and source for their funding from all these different avenues to put together, you know, like a financial package that will get them through college. So you have to understand that if you're coming from outside you can't get a loan from the government. They usually apply every year. So you have to be able to get an assistantship that is, and so how the assistantship works is that you teach some classes or you do some research with a professor, and your tuition is paid, and some of them may actually also give you a stipend for living expenses, you know. So for instance, I got a small stipend, you know, to pay for my living expenses, which I used to pay, you know, rent and to purchase, you know, food and other things. But even that was not enough. I had to apply for some additional, you know, scholarships, which, you know, are listed. So let me just share, for example, this institution, because I saw a question in the chat box about, you know, how do we identify faculty? So if you go to a website, you know, most of these institutions will list their faculty somewhere. Yeah. And you can see here, the faculty are listed here. And then there's usually more information about the faculty member. So you can click on more information, and then you will see the faculty, like where they studied, a description of their scholarly work. So for instance, you can see here, this faculty member has done research on all these topics. You can see their email is listed here, the telephone number. Yeah. And so that's how you identify, like, okay, this is a professor I think I can work with because I'm interested in STEM education or something like that. And so you can actually email the professor and just introduce yourself briefly and ask maybe even to talk or ask any questions about the program. Yeah, so that's how you, the question that was asked about identifying faculty. And then,
I want to,
yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to add something about assistantships and scholarships and funding. So the student visa that you get from the US Embassy is very specific about what you can and cannot do. So one of the things that the US visa says for the US students visa says is that you're only allowed to work 20 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then you may find that the money is very little and you want to work outside to make extra money to make ends meet. The only problem is that if you're found out, it's a violation of the student visa. And what the International Students Office has been mandated to do by the Department of Homeland Security is to report students who are breaking or violating their student's visa. And you could lose your student status, you could lose and you could easily be deported, right? So a lot of people come thinking that, well, I'll make money on the side, I'll get paid under the table. And some actually do get away with it. But just know that if you're ever found out, it's a violation of a student visa, and you could get into trouble. So what I think one of the things that helped me was so Arkansas, where I was a student, is a poor state. And so the money that I was being given as a graduate assistant was able to go further than if I was living, for example, in New York or California or Boston or some expensive cities. So that's another consideration. When you think about the stipend or the money that you're going to be given as an assistant, as a graduate assistant, you have to think about how will I be able to survive on this amount of money? Some people will want to come with their families, and that's very understandable. So just know that that stipend may not go as far as you think it will, depending on what your needs are.
Okay, thank you so much. That's very important what you've said. And that's why we are emphasizing here about funding, that you have to secure all the funding that you will need before, of course, the university will not even give you the documents to apply for a visa without, showing that you are able to pay for the program. But
it's doable.
It's doable, yeah.
Doable.
And then, that's why we are here, trying to show you how to get the sufficient funding so you are not struggling while you are studying. And so I just want to show like this university and show things about, because I got a question like, how do I make sure that I'm in a good position to get, let's say, like a graduate assistantship, because they are competitive. So for instance, this university talks about tuition and financial aid. That's the language that they will use to talk about how do you fund for your studies. And usually they'll have information about how much it costs, the tuition and fees. Yeah, for a PhD program, they will say the enrollment and how much it's per unit and how much is the total tuition. You see here, 74,000. Yeah. For a master's program, let's say in marito-informed therapy, they say here how much it will cost. Yeah. And plus other fees. And it's estimated is 90,000, So that is what is called the cost of attendance. Yeah. Let me go here and now go to scholarships and grants. So for here, you can see this institution has a number of assistance programs. There's the Dean's Excellence Award. That is for people who have, you've come in, they're really impressed. They see that you have a high GPA and you have the potential to really succeed and contribute to the program. There's another award here, and they would usually say who it is for. So for instance, you can see this one is saying is offered for students who identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Yeah. And students with limited, travel experience and all that. There is this scholarship. Yeah, you have to read and see the what I call the eligibility requirements and whether you meet them. And then they also talk about the application. Many of them have an application process. You don't just get automatically. And so here you can see there's an application where you may have to write an essay. And so you have to write a good essay to explain why you need that scholarship and how you, and how you're eligible. So all these are, you can see they are scholarships. Then there is, here I can't see where they have put assistantships, but I think maybe they come under the department. Yeah, here, doctoral, graduate, and research assistantships. Yeah, so this is the purpose. They say applicants should be enrolled, admitted, and carry a full course load of 6 units. They award students tuition support in the amount of 2,000 to 15,000. Yeah, and then there's an application process. Yeah, so the application process is competitive, so it's like applying for a job. Yeah, you have to write a cover letter and provide your CV. And so just like the way you would do for a job, it's serious. Don't take it cavalierly, and thinking, oh, this is just a application. They know I need money. And so if I just write something, they are going to award me. No, that's not the case. Write whatever they ask you to write, have somebody review, your essay, have somebody review your cover letter, have somebody review your CV. Yeah, some of them even require an interview. So even if they shortlist you, like, oh, we're interested in this person, they're going to interview you and find out, do you have the experience to teach and the capacity to teach? And so you will have to prepare for it the way you would prepare for a job interview. It's that serious. And so just the way you'd prepare for a job interview is the way you'd prepare, to be qualified for an assistantship. And you can see there are several of them. They want to see that you are able to do what it is that assistantship is going to require. So I think it's important to share that. And yeah, so you can see there's a mix of scholarships, grants, and assistantships that make the total package of what can support you through a graduate program. I think we have really extended that. Unless there are other questions, I'm looking in the box here.
I have a question here.
Yeah.
As an African woman, how should I prepare myself mentally to go through the admissions process? What supports are there to help us navigate the system and excel? So I don't know if it's much different for African women than for other women in terms of preparation. What I know is that there are lots of steps. You have to be committed to the process. You can't give up halfway. If you're in the middle of the application process and they tell you, we need this other document, you need to be able to go ahead and look for that document, whether you need to scan it or to go back to your old school to find somebody who will get you what you need. And then one of the things that is there in place in universities is the International Students Office. You can reach out to them, ask them for help. You can also look in the list of faculty, as Dr. Maribe was showing you the list of faculty in a department, and see if there's maybe a female professor, especially if she's African or a minority, and you can get into a conversation with her. I know that there's a young Kenyan woman who reached out to me, and she wanted to join our program, and so just because of where I'm coming from, I do have a soft spot for her, or I have a soft spot for women like those. And, you know, I would give her all the help that she needs. I can be an advocate for her. So I think she finally joined our university. I haven't worked with her directly, but was able to give her the information that she was looking for. So if you can identify somebody within the school that you're applying to and begin a conversation with her, never know what kind of advice or information that she may give you that's not available, say, on the website.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And I want to clarify that, Dr. Merive, Dr. Macharia. At this stage, when you are finding somebody to talk to, do not send them your transcripts yet. They might think you're trying to cut corners. This is just an inquiry you're trying to establish, like, I'm interested in your research. Yeah, don't send your CV yet unless they ask you, because it's just gonna go to the trash. At that point, they don't look at your CV, and unless somebody asks you, can you send me that? Don't send your documents yet.
Okay, great.
And there's something else you talked about, the assistantships. Normally, like, the universities have gone through whatever they can give me, that assistantship or teaching assistantship or graduate assistantship, I've been able to live on that. So yeah, they know you can live on that if you are careful. But if you're a spender, then you're gonna have to look for other places. And Peter, when you saw that kind of list of scholarships, you know, this thing came to my mind. When you join a university, depending on your work ethic and how you're doing, other money can start being pouring into you. If you are an excellent teacher, if you're doing research, if they know you have a family, you might find other scholarships work. A university is not going to get you here to suffer. I think that many choices sometimes we make ourselves. Maybe unfortunate circumstances might come in, but a university is not going to bring you here to let you suffer. You know, if they see there's a genuine need, they're human beings, you know, they're going to step in for you if you're doing your work.
Yeah, wow, thank you so much. I think at this point, I would just like to maybe do another poll just to find out how we are doing. And while I'm doing that, while I'm trying to do that poll, okay, well, we did that one. There was a question from someone who asked, I am interested in pursuing a PhD, but I find as mature entry, most scholarships I have seem to lock out those who are over 40 years old. Is it easy at your university? And so I find that interesting. I didn't know, I didn't think that, yeah, some of them may actually say age. I don't see many of them that say that. But if the scholarship eligibility says that, you know, it's a certain age, I don't know whether you can do much, you know, to change that. But you have to look for a scholarship that you're eligible for. Yeah, that, you know, doesn't state that this is for people under 35 years and you're over 35. I don't know what you think, because I think for many of them, they try not to discriminate based on, you know, age, except if they have said that we are looking at your long-term contribution to the field. I don't know what you folks have to say. This is new to me, unless the thing says specifically the age. What do you folks have to say about that?
I don't think they say the age. What they're likely to say is young emerging scholars. You know, it's like, what does that mean? They don't, maybe that scholarship does not want somebody who has been working for 20 years, you know, and they might be looking for somebody maybe who are just graduated, they have a first class or second class honors or stuff like that. But in terms of numbers, they are not likely to put a number, because that would be discrimination. You can sue them. Yeah, that's what I have to say.
Okay. Yeah,
well, other
thanks.
universities might say somebody who is very experienced, somebody who has work experience in community development or global studies, and you know, but kind of age, I have not seen that. I don't know, Dr. Mashari, have you seen that? It would be inappropriate, I think.
Not as a student, or you mean as a scholar? I I would say if I were you, I would focus on assistantship as opposed to scholarship.
Mhm.
The assistantship, there's usually no, they don't have those kind of conditions.
Mhm. Yeah, they don't have the age limit. It's your
No,
qualifications to.
not for assistantships.
Yeah. So for Mercy, who asked that question, I hope it's answered. If it's not, you can just let us know. So here is the poll. The familiarity with, let me share the results here. The familiarity with the US grad system. Most people said it's a mystery, it's a little knowledgeable, somewhat knowledgeable. No one said it's a breeze, which it shouldn't be. Otherwise, it would be too presumptuous. But I hope this this panel is helping, and it's giving you some tips and some pointers. And actually, you can go back to Facebook and watch the recording if you so desire, and pick up some points. So let me stop this one here and see if there are any other questions, because now we are bringing to a landing. I think the question I have received here is from someone who wants a specific, a scholarship in a specific field, which I don't know whether we are really addressing that, sustainable tourism. And I think we addressed that earlier when we said, okay, you have to actually go to the internet and look for universities that teach travel and tourism. And you just have to search and see the ones that are highly rated and ranked, either by things like, especially by the outcomes. Many universities measure inputs, but the good universities show you what is the outcome. Like, have students gotten jobs in this specific field? Are they known for producing people? Because some universities specialize in different areas. Some are research intensive, and so if you go this program, you expected that you're going to enter into a PhD and into a scholarship, professor field. Others are preparing people more to be, professionals in a certain, field, like counseling or teaching, or in business, or things like that. So I think we're almost coming to a landing, and at this point, maybe we can just talk briefly about like next steps. So we have folks here, they're thinking about, hopefully they're thinking about fall or next year or 2023. I mean, what are the next steps? So we have here, for instance, somebody who asked, I don't know whether you addressed that question. For instance, one boy asked Dr. Macharia, as an African woman, should I prepare myself mentally? How should I prepare myself mentally? What supports are there to help us navigate the system and excel? Yeah, so let's say somebody's already been admitted, they have gotten the letter, they are hooray, thank God, they are rejoicing with their families, and they are now preparing to come. What can you say for this student?
I think I already talked about that.
I think you answered that. Yeah. I think there's no magic number or magic way to prepare. Once you are accepted, it's like just get ready to come and work. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There's also another question. What happens when they ask for the research paper done? How do I navigate that? I'm not very sure exactly. Or maybe they're asking, have you done, is that what you're asking, this Florence, to submit, like, have you done the work that you've done? Yeah, so research paper that you've done. I'm assuming that's what she means. So
If
might be talking about, maybe if you're thinking about a master's program or a PhD program, they might be asking, what is your thesis? Do you do any participate in any research during your undergraduate? So any work you did to help a professor, you don't have to publish it, but any research work you did that can be attached to your CV, your academic CV, not your work CV, mostly your academic CV, any kind of research that you have done or helped somebody handle data or write a paper, or thesis, yeah, you need to highlight that a lot. Many people don't
Okay.
care how many people you have managed or how much money you have made. They just care about, can you excel in an academic setting, because we are talking about graduate school here.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's exactly correct. So it doesn't have to have been published in a journal at that stage, but you need to have been able to show that you have done some research. So Joe is asking, Empower Financing keep advertising on Facebook that they are for real. Are they for real, or is it a Shylock organization? Well, if you see an advertisement on Facebook, you have to double check that. And I just wonder, what do you folks say? And I don't know whether it is they're advertising. I don't know if this has to do with a graduate program, Joe, but let's say you see an advertisement on Facebook. I've seen many of a graduate program or something like that. What do you folks say?
This age of social media and all that, we have lots of predators out there. And you're going to see some people saying you have to pay $50 to qualify for a scholarship. I think if anything, asking you to pay upfront and it's not an application process to a university, I would stay away from that. There are many predators out there, and they know we have many desperate people willing to do anything to get to a university system in the US. So if anything is asking upfront, or they are focused more on Facebook and social media, personally, I would stay away from that.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. So I think we've really now coming to a close, and I just want to do one last poll, but in the meantime, please prepare like your last comments as we close. So now that we come to the end of this, I want to ask this poll and say, what is your confidence level now that, especially if you've been here throughout, let us know what you think. And as they are filling out that, maybe you can give your last comments, Dr. Macharia, Dr. Kitheka.
Okay, I'll go first. I would say, as a closing comment, that if you're interested in pursuing graduate studies, don't let the fear of the financial burden, stop you. And I would also say, don't focus on looking for scholarships. Scholarships are highly competitive. You'll be competing, especially for the academic scholarships, you'll be competing with people from all over the world. If it's a sports scholarship, you'll have to be like a top athlete. And again, if you have an injury, you're on your own. I would say focus on the assistantships. If you as assistantships, you work with a professor, you teach, you do research, you help them, they take care of you. So that's what I would end with.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kitheka.
What I could say, I don't know, I could elaborate this. Somebody could email me if they want, don't take a no to be a rejection. Don't go suck. If somebody rejects you or they don't accept you, don't, I have never taken no. I've been told no many times, but I've always pushed myself. It's like, I want that, I'm gonna go for it. Before I came to the US, I had worked in Kenya, I had worked in Malawi, I had worked in South Sudan, I had worked in Kazakhstan, and I knew I wanted to go to grad school. And so, keep on persisting, don't quit. Like, if you want it, go for it. Keep trying, find people who can help you. If you want to email me, we can try. If it doesn't work with me, try another person. So just don't give up if you want it.
Okay, great. And for myself, well, I would say I'm getting some questions here which I feel we have already addressed. And so if you have, I can see some questions here we have already addressed. So you can go to Facebook, search for @5Gen Legacy, and you will see, you'll get the recording. So you can go through and so the questions have been addressed. And also, if you want to contact me, I also coach people through the process of, applying. And so if you want that as a focused attention, you can contact me through 5genlegacy@gmail, and you can also visit my website at 5genlegacy.weebly.com, and you can drop me a message there. And let's end with this poll. What is your confidence level? I'm glad there's no one who is saying that I am lost. Let me share the results.
All right.
All right, so I'm lost. No one is feeling like I am totally lost. At least some people are feeling I'm somewhat confident. Others are saying I can see light at the end of the tunnel, and there's some who are saying I'm confident to then take the next step. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll be putting more events like this. If you have something that you would like addressed, email and let us know what topics you would like for next panel. But thank you so much, and have a good evening wherever you are. Bye-bye.
Thank you for organizing, Dr. Maribe. Thank you, Dr. Mashari.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone else.
Thank you for participating.
Thank you.